Welcome to your Key Discovery Point. I am Burney from Nextpoint, joined by Doug Austin of eDiscovery today. Doug, we are recording this on Friday, December 6th, which is after our celebration day of eDiscovery Day. That was yesterday, December 5th. And the reason we're bringing this up, you had a great post that you posted today on a webinar that I had the privilege of being on with you, Tom O'Connor, and Kelly Twigger, where we were talking about navigating hyperlinked files in eDiscovery, what some people say modern attachments, some say cloud attachments. We had a wonderful hour together yesterday talking through the mechanics, the technology, the case law associated with this. And it seems that I think all the audience members were having their own conversation in the chat thread as well. It was just a good time, I think, was had by all. But we had one audience poll question, which I thought was just fascinating. And that's what you really posted about today, about how much they think or their perspective on whether hyperlink files should even be collected and produced to the other side.
Yeah, before I get to that, I do want to say thanks to all the people who attended, who signed up and attended yesterday. Not only did we get great feedback, which is obviously very nice to hear, but as you mentioned, Brett, they did have a chat function in the webinar, and people were talking, people were asking questions, they were making comments, they were really engaged.
Answering questions.
Really there
great
was
stuff.
our discussion. Yeah, there was our discussion going on in the main webinar, and then discussions going on in the chat, which some of us jumped in that times. And I'm going to look to try to do a follow-up post based on some of the things that we're talking about in the chat.
Good.
So yeah, look for that hopefully here in the next week or so. But yes, we did do a poll question, and it's a question. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. So it's a poll question that is pretty much, I think, what a lot of people are kind of asking these days. And what I also asked on the eDiscovery State of the Industry report survey, which by the time you see this will have ended, but it will get a sense of responses there. But the question here was, should hyperlink files be treated as modern attachments and produced along with the emails containing the links? And I didn't just include a simple yes or no.
Right.
I actually provided a couple of variations of yes and a couple of variations of no. And so you see the choices there. The first one is all hyperlink files should be produced for relevant responsive emails, as they provide context. Or the second yes option was hyperlink files should be produced, but only if the hyperlink files are relevant and responsive as well. Because that's what I've heard from some people, is that you shouldn't have to produce every hyperlink file, just those that are relevant. Then the no options were hyperlink files should not be produced with relevant responsive emails, but they should be produced separately, like as standalone files, if they're independently relevant responsive. And then finally, what I would consider the draconian, no, hyperlink files shouldn't be produced at all, either with relevant responsive emails or independently. So, and that actually is one of my in one of my 5 assumptions. Assumption number 4 is those files will still be produced even if not. So we had not gotten to the assumptions yet, but here were the results as you're scrolling that up. 212 people answered the poll question, so that's a pretty good number.
That's great.
And we had 34%, just over a third, say that they should be all hyperlink files should be produced. 46 respondents. The top choice said hyperlink files should be produced if they're relevant and responsive as well. You add those two numbers together, that's 80% that said yes, hyperlink files should be produced as modern attachments with the corresponding emails. Only 20% said no, and all of that 20% was basically said that they shouldn't be produced with relevant responsive emails, but should be produced separately if they're independently relevant responsive. Nobody picked the draconian choice of shouldn't be produced at all in any form. So that was very interesting because I've done polls, like just kind of informal polls at a couple of kind of like in-person sessions. And it's pretty much kind of a 50-50 is what I've generally seen out there in audiences. So this is definitely a lot more one-sided than I would have expected. Now, as you can see there, we're up to, I think it's 548 respondents. And so we'll be somewhere around 550 or so. Next month, when the State of the Industry Report survey comes out, we'll have a larger sample
Even more
size.
answers. Yeah, that's
A
great.
larger sample size of that same answers to that same question, plus thought leader observations on the same question. So we'll be looking for that next month.
The only quick thing I thought here is 80% of respondents answered that yes, those first two yes questions. And my thought, Doug, certainly based on some of the discussion we had yesterday, was it's easy to answer yes, but it is a little more difficult to actually go and do the collections or connect those attachments, those quote modern attachments, hyperlink files to those email messages. And, that just was some of the challenges that we were talking about. It's easy to say yes, but how do we actually go about doing that? We talked through some of those some of those aspects and some of the tools that are out there today. It's not easy, but this is certainly going to be a challenge, and I'm thrilled that you included that on your State of the Industry report. Which, I'm excited that I'm looking forward to that coming out too.
Yeah, and I'll just mention one more thing about that. Yeah, I mean, this question is a little bit aspirational because I considered putting something into about the proportionality burden, what have you, but I just
Right.
really felt like the question is, should they? If you can, should
Yes.
they?
Yeah.
And so, and you can, proportionally, should you? So that's the way I phrased the question. And we saw a pretty interesting, response as a result.
Good stuff. While I don't know if the recording is going to be made available, Xtero hosted the eDiscovery Day, and just be looking for that. And you can go to, I think it's eDiscoveryday.com, not eDiscovery Today. That's your site. But I do have just another resource that I can send to folks. I did a blog post a few months ago. You say modern attachments, I say hyperlinks. Can't we just link up and get along? And it just goes through some of the challenges that we talked about yesterday. In fact, I even mentioned Judge Johnston in here, and some of the history of what we mean when we say email attachments versus the quote modern attachment today, which is really, as we discussed yesterday, Doug, a hyperlinked file, right? It's not really an attachment. And how do you go about doing that? Anyway, it's certainly something that I think is going to continue into the next year or two as being sort of an eDiscovery challenge. But anyway, I'm glad that you covered that today. Thanks, Doug, for sharing a little bit of that today. And that's your eDiscovery point today. Thanks, Doug.
All right, thank you, Rhett, and we'll see you all next time.